Hello, hello, and welcome to the Mzansi Soccer Show. This is your weekly South African soccer show that covers the DSTV Premiership and all the other news surrounding the South African game. This week, obviously, it's myself and Paul Mutlani, and I've got Thabang and I with me as well. We'll be covering reactions to the weekend and week's fixtures. We'll be talking Soweto Derby that's happening this weekend. It seems like I thought we've had two games already. It surpassed me that we were going to have the derby this weekend. It was a nice surprise. And also we'll be talking about TTM, who today actually had the PSL approve another transaction to buy the majority stake in the club by a consortium, a company that will move it to Polokwane. The name stays the same for this season. They'll compete as TTM, but we're going to talk about that and what it means for the game. A lot of people are not happy about that. But anyway, before we get going, remember, please follow us and interact with us on these different platforms: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and on YouTube. The most important one's the one at the bottom. It says, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, largely because we've got incredible content from the team. We have a wider team that covers different sports. We've got a cricket test match going on, and that's live most of the days, especially tomorrow as well. South Africa, and a little bit of a spot of bother, but the game is poised really nicely, and so it's really interesting there. So please do follow us and the rest. So most importantly, let's get going. T-Man, how are you doing?
I'm great, thanks, and yourself, Paul. There's been a flurry of fixtures in the there's been a flurry of fixtures in the PSL. It's almost hard to keep in touch, but it's always good for us we're always on the edge of our seats. It's always great football in the PSL, and Paul. It's coming at us thick and fast, and this is what we love, and Paul. The teams have really got to adapt to the season, and Paul, because we've really got to catch up in terms of the missed games from August.
No, that's true, and yeah, the transfer window is perpetually open right now, guys. I don't even know if it closed for like a week, but people are making transfers. Mansberg bought a goalkeeper from Germany, so it's wild. But that's what this season with COVID is.
But definitely, as you said, I think the transfer season closed in around October, November, and you find that there was just 1 month break, and now teams are able to sell players and transfer players. And it is an adapt season, and teams have really got to adapt to the conditions presented to them. Could be a good thing for certain teams to strengthen in positions where they find themselves weak. As you know, some teams are really trying to fight relegation, and the fixtures are coming thick and fast, something that I spoke of earlier. So if you find that there are a couple of free agents that you can put onto your roster, now's the time, because a lot of teams are complaining, saying that a lot of our players are injured, but there's a lot of free agents out there. Let's get players some contracts to prove themselves and redeem themselves, and also show themselves and showcase their talent to the South African football fraternity.
Yes. So now, T-Man, we've got a lot of games that happened this weekend, a full slate this weekend. Sundowns drew to Morocco Swallows in the top of the table clash. Swallows coming back very late to score there. Chippa United getting Dylan Kerr fired by beating Black Leopards 3-0. Stellenbosch and Kaizer Chiefs a 0-0 draw. Baroka FC losing to Amazulu, who last week we were lamenting the fact that they can't seem to win games and score goals. They scored 2 against Bajaja there. Maritzburg United losing to Orlando Pirates 1-0. Chakuma Matsandila, before the players were told that the club was sold, losing 2-0 to SuperSport United. Cape Town City and Golden Arrows playing in the game of the week. At 60 minutes, T-Man, this game was about 2-2, and then Cape Town City just came in with just goals and goals. Really great goals from Cape Town City. Many people are saying they're an exciting side. Over the weekend, T-Man, did you catch any of these games? What do you think of the results?
I catch the mouth-watering fixture of the weekend. Mamelodi Sundowns up against Morocco Swallows. It was a bit slow in the beginning. We were expecting a humdinger of a game, but both teams very cautious and playing very, very cautiously. Obviously, it was a top of the table clash, so teams are very, very careful when they play those kinds of fixtures. Mamelodi Sundowns, being the stronger side in terms of quality, took an early lead, But what a great end to the fixture, because Musa Nyatama, who is a former Mamelodi Sundowns player, unfortunately he couldn't find his rhythm at Mamelodi Sundowns. He signed for Sundowns but didn't really get a lot of game time there. He was able to put one against his former employers by scoring in the last minute for Swallows. So it was a draw at the top of the table. AmaZulu managing to get their first win under Benny McCarthy. Things are a bit slow for Benny up there in KZN, but it's always good to see AmaZulu finally getting on track with Benny McCarthy, a former South African football legend. I managed to watch Maritzburg United versus Orlando Pirates. As we're going to talk about the derby a bit later on. But I was really impressed with their new left back Bongani Sam, the 23-year-old who previously played for Bloemfontein Celtic. He's been injured of late. He's really finding his form. He put in a very good cross for Dion Hotto in that game, where Dion Hotto scored a very good goal. SuperSport United, watch out for Mzansi Soccer. They're currently on 27 points with 14 games. Mamelodi Sundowns is on 15 points with 30 games. So watch out for Mzansi Soccer.
It's the other way around. The SuperSport has the game in hand. Sundowns are on 14 games played, 30 points. SuperSport 13 games played, 27 points. Swallows also 13 games played, 27 points. So we should be worried about them. They have scored the second highest number of goals in the league in 22, tied with Mamelodi Sundowns.
Exactly what I was saying there, is that let's watch out for Mzansi, because they've got that game in hand. If they are able to win that game, they'll be level on points with Mamelodi Sundowns. Obviously, Mamelodi Sundowns have the superior goal difference, so that will work in their favor. But Mzansi Soccer are high in confidence, led by a former coach, a former player, and former captain of the club in Kaitana Tembo. They've also got the striker, Bradley Krobler, the league's current leading goal scorer. And Bradley Krobler also has the confidence of recently breaking Abram Rasilimani's record. Go SuperSport, go the boys from Pretoria. So as a team, that's really they're flying high on confidence. And that's the thing about this PSL that we've spoken about before. You get a couple of good games on the trot, and you're definitely putting your hand up. Let me just quickly look at the relegation battle. The relegation battle is very difficult to predict, because these teams, one day they lose 3 on the trot, and then they come and then beat the team 3-0 out of nowhere. So all of these teams, in the form of Chippo United, Black Leopards, Chippo United, Black Leopards, and TS Galaxy. All of those teams they're blowing hot and cold. There's only one team that's really consistently showing a bit of poor performance as of late, and that's the strugglers of Bafana.
So looking at the bottom three, TTM, Black Leopards, and Maritzburg United are all on 9 points. Bloem Celtic 13th with 11 points. TS Galaxy with that win, I think it was last week, is on 12, and Chippa United having only lost one of their last 5, winning 2, drawing 2, and losing 1, are on 13 points. So if you think about Chippa United, they collected 8 points in the last 5 games, which now puts them at 13 points after 13 games. So Dan seems seemingly working there. Look, T-Man, let's move on to the next games, the midweek fixtures. Lots of draws happening and a win for Mamelodi Sundowns. Yes, obviously, Orlando Pirates and TS Galaxy. That game left a lot of Pirates fans frustrated. There's a lot of issues that we'll talk about now when we move on to the derby in a few moments. A lot of issues at the back there from an Orlando Pirates perspective. Kaizer Chiefs as well conceding easily against Baroka FC and having to claw back to draw. And then obviously Sundowns beating Black Leopards yesterday 2-1 to kind of give themselves that push up the table.
100%. These games were the teams, arguably the most watched teams in the PSL, playing on both Tuesday and Wednesday. Kaizer Chiefs and they hit a rich vein of form for 3 games. And everyone was looking at them in anticipation, especially with the derby coming up. They had a chance to narrow the gap between them and Orlando Pirates. They've managed to get into the top 8, but they've also hit a bit of a break in form at the moment, drawing successive matches against Stellenbosch and Baroka. You'll note that they didn't score a goal yesterday. So it's Kaizer Chiefs. I mean, they've played very well. They showed us their potential in those 3 games on the trot that they won, but they weren't able to get 2 on the trot. And these, I mean, as a team that's such a high brand, you play teams like Stellenbosch and Baroka on the trot. But this is an opportunity for you to build confidence and get 5 wins on the trot, 15 points and that really, really can put you closer to Mamelodi Sundowns, SuperSport United, and Morocco Swallows. You said it 100% that Orlando Pirates is struggling as of late, but Orlando Pirates have got the best. They can field the best 11 in the PSL, in my view. Sundowns has the best squad in Orlando Pirates can field the best 11. They've got some of the best 11 players that they can put on the field and very young players. Sundowns has a bit of older players in the form of Champa Kikana. Orlando Pirates has very, very young players. Tim Mposi, who are in the prime of their careers. They've got the Orlando Pirates captain at the back. They've got the Bafana captain at the back in the form of Tulane Tlazwayo. They've got one of the most veteran players, a veteran player. He's very well versed in Happy Jell at the back, but they're struggling at the back for some reason. They've got Dion Hotto. He's really firing on all cylinders. He's really playing well up front. He's had a couple of good games. I've seen they've got Bongani Sam on the left, who's really deputizing for Innocent Mayela, who's picked up an injury as of late. So another Pirates is the fans are getting a bit impatient because they know very well. They know what we're saying at the moment. They can understand that they've got the best players at their disposal, but they're not finding that form that's setting them apart from the rest of the teams in the PSL. And that's where the frustration is coming from the Orlando Pirates faithful. I watched the game. Mamelodi Sundowns up against. I was going to say, I was watching the game. Sundowns up against Black Leopards and Peter Shaulili. He is on fire, He scored. You saw his first goal, That was a spectacular goal, It was a beautiful cross. He couldn't control it first time, He managed to lift the board, and he put in a spectacular scissor kick. This is what I want to say. Sometimes, the PSL doesn't give. It's been a bit of. It's always difficult to watch some games, that flair that we used to, it sometimes dies down, but it's always good to see moments like that in South African football, Peter Shaulili is scoring a brace.
No, that's true, and no, that's true. He scored a brace, and he's been on point, and I just love the fact that he tucks in a shirt. It's great. But for me, Peter Shaulili's movement at the top is one thing that sets him apart. But let's move over. We spoke about. I think you started talking about Pirates. Let's talk about the Soweto Derby. It's the first one in the league. This season, we've already had 2 where Pirates beat Kaizer Chiefs in aggregate. I think it was 5 goals to 0 in the MTN8 in the semi-final. Now, obviously, it's the league, it's the derby. Normally, it would have happened in November, but because of COVID, it's happening at the back end of January. Both teams, as you've spoken, both teams have in different runs of form. Pirates are looking to challenge for the title, and they started the season off well. They stuttered a little bit, and now they find themselves outside of the top 4, sitting in 5th position with 22 points after 14 games, whereas Kaizer Chiefs as well struggled at the beginning of the season. Not the best squad because obviously the ban that happened, the CAS situation and the transfer ban, and they couldn't get a win going, but they had that run of games. They won in their last 5. They won 3. And they haven't lost in the last 5. They've won 3 and drawn 2. So that's 11 points in the last 5 games. They're now sitting in 7th, 4 points behind Orlando Pirates. Obviously, the couple of draw last week, there was a 2-point gap, but the Kaizer Chiefs decided to draw both games, and Pirates opening up that gap by 4 points. Looking at the fixture on Saturday, it is a derby. They're not going to be fans, T-Man. So we got a taste of it at the MTN8. The intensity was likely there, but without having fans, there's not a lot of pressure. But everyone's watching on TV, so the pressure will still be there. The keyboard warriors, the thumb warriors will be there, telling people where they've stepped off wrong. But how do both teams approach this? From a Kaizer Chiefs perspective, from a Pirates perspective, how do they need to approach this? I think both teams need to go out for the win. I think they're too far behind in the title race to take this one as a draw. We saw Morocco Swallows and Mamelodi Sundowns drawing on the weekend. We saw teams that were kind of cagey-ish, not wanting to give anybody an advantage. But because they're so far behind the guys above them, they need to win this one. They need to go out for the win. I hope they do. This game normally ends in a draw. But I look at both teams and I kind of feel as though, from a Pirates perspective, defensively, they're trying to find the right combination. I think they found the right left back in Bongani Sam. How they figure out how they work out that center back partnership, whether Tyson is the number one guy. I've heard stories from people saying that Tyson's quite slow. He's not a ball playing center back, so that kind of hurts Orlando Pirates. And I'm like, and my thoughts are, it's South Africa. I don't think a ball playing center back is very important, rather than a guy who can make tackles, can marshal the defense, and control everything else. Yes, ball playing is important, but in South Africa, if you want to play out the back, you're inviting trouble. And obviously, hopefully, they've sorted out the goalkeeper situation with Richard Ofori as their goalkeeper. From a Chiefs perspective, also they've got issues at the back. Seemingly, they've somehow in this run of 5 games sorted those out. Their strength is up front with Nurkovic back. We're happy to see Nurkovic back. I think a lot of Chiefs fans are happy to see him back. The league's happy to see him back because he was such a great marksman. He's the one who can go up against that Pirates defense and cause a lot of problems, a lot of high balls, diagonal balls. But obviously the question for Gavin Hunt is, will he play the young kids in this one? In that empty net, you kind of felt that he was forced to use the young kids because that second leg was effectively a dead rubber, and so you're giving people an opportunity to play. How do you see this game, T-Man, unfolding? Where are the weaknesses, where are the strengths for both teams?
You asked me for who's the pressure on for this game. The pressure is on the Pirates. Joseph Zimbabwe is under a little bit of pressure. Orlando Pirates, they've hit almost like a block in their form. They've lost their momentum, and there's a lot of pressure that the fans are asking a lot of questions from him. As we've mentioned before on the show, they've got the better players. They're the team that's under pressure. They won convincingly against Kaizer Chiefs 5-0 on aggregate before. They've got the top players at the moment. So the pressure is on them at the moment. But if Orlando Pirates, sometimes what you find with the derby is that the BMT element comes into play, whereby teams understand that if there's one game where the stakes are high, where the pressure is high, it's at a burning point in the season where Joseph Zimbabwe is under a lot of pressure. So Orlando Pirates can pull a rabbit out of a hat, and this pressure situation could actually turn out to be a blessing in disguise, whereby they lift their performance up high and they show us the performance that's testament of the players that they have at their disposal. And under Pirates, let's look at the attacking players at their disposal who are scheduled, who are set to play. They've got Vincent Pule. Vincent Pule really has been he's been a consistent member of the starting 11. He's probably one of the first players on the attacking front that Joseph Zimbabwe puts first onto his team. Very creative player. Sometimes his decision making lets him down in the last third, but if he can make the right decision up front, he can be a very dangerous player for Kaizer Chiefs. Up front, Dion Hotto, I've really been impressed with him of late. He's really a dangerous attacking player. He will definitely start for Orlando Pirates. I was reading a report that Orlando Pirates, from a striking perspective, Sakele Lepasa, Tepkotso Mabasa, and Gobadino Mhango are injured, so it does give an opportunity for some of the bench players to kind of take this opportunity at their disposal and show the Orlando Pirates faithful that this is a game that they can actually make their mark on. In midfield, Thabang and I is recently, I've always been impressed with him back from his days at Bidvest. He has almost cemented his place in the middle of the park for Orlando Pirates, together with Fortune Makaringi. So if they're in the middle of the park, I just feel as though the battle in the middle of the park, it's going to be won by Orlando Pirates. They've got the stronger midfield players. They've got the players with experience, and this is that's why I'm leaning towards Orlando Pirates in this game. One thing I love about what you said just now is that the pressure is not on Kaizer Chiefs. So they can play their youngsters. And if their youngsters, together with an experienced player like Lebogang Manyama, if Njabula Blom and Happy Mashiane can link well together with Lebogang Manyama, it could add pressure for the Orlando Pirates defense, which has been at 6s and 7s in recent games. up front for Samir Nekovic. He won man of the match last, was it the previous weekend, where he played very, very well.
It was against, yes. It was the game where it was last week, midweek,
midweek against
against
TTM. It was midweek against TTM.
Yes, yes.
100%.
Yes.
Where he didn't score
goals.
goals.
3-0, but he got man of the match after we won 3-0. It was very surprising.
No, but he got man of the match because he was so creative up front. He was, as you said, the marksman that he is. He was laying on the balls for the role that Castro should be playing. Nekovic was mastering that role with distinction. The player that all eyes will be on for Kaizer Chiefs will definitely be Ngobo, because Mpila has really, really shown his growth and maturity that he's found this season. One thing that I love. I'm a huge fan. I'm a fan of this. I want to see youngsters playing in the PSL. If you've got a youngster, why are we seeing a player like Bongani Sam at 23 years old? And why are we seeing a young player like Bongani Sam coming to the forefront at 23 years old? We should have seen him at a younger age. He seems like a veteran on the left flank for Orlando Pirates, and that's what I'm saying. Happy Mashian. Why are we seeing a player like him coming up to the forefront at 23 years old? Where were these players at age 20? This could have been an opportunity for them. At age 20, he could have been playing for Kaizer Chiefs, and by now, he could be playing for the Brightons, for the Southamptons, and for the teams in Europe.
Like I've always said, our league has so much money in it. Our players get paid quite a lot compared to others in the market. So there's no incentive to move off. You get paid quite well compared to some of the other European teams. There's no incentive to move off. Coaches don't want to build up young players because they get fired if they start losing games. You see what's happening at Chipa. You saw what's happening at Black Leopards. You saw what's happening at all these other clubs in Maritzburg and everything else. So trusting the youngsters could cost you your job because of the way it is. And also, players from a salary perspective, South Africa is great. And why do you need to leave and go somewhere else when you get paid just as much here at home and you're a celebrity and everything else? It's my biggest bugbear. We've spoken about this for a lot of times. But yeah, I think on your points, for me, when you look at Samir Nurkovic, I'm a fan of players who create space, who stretch the field, who enable others to come into the game and play. And that's what Kaizer Chiefs was missing throughout the beginning of the season, a player who, like Nurkovic, who can hold the ball up, who can stretch the field, stretch the defenders, force his teammates to play behind the defenders. Pirates have that in abundance. They've got Lodge, they've got Bule, they've got Dion Hotter, that front three. They move, they've got the pace, they do everything very well. And on top of that, they enable that midfield of Pirates to then step up and take the second ball to put teams under pressure. The issue with Orlando Pirates is sometimes that goal-scoring threat isn't there. They're missing too many easy chances. They are conceding too many easy goals. But from an offensive perspective, they just, I think they expect the goals stat must be so high because they get such great chances, but they just don't finish it. They move so well. Zakele Lepas at the beginning of the season was just causing defenses, putting defenses in 6s and 7s because he was coming from deep. He was coming through angles. He was running, and the midfielders were obliging. Only problem is they can't finish. T-Man, I know you said you're leaning Pirates. I think I'm also leaning Pirates for this game. One more comment about not having the fans there. How will the atmosphere be? We had a taste of it earlier on in the MTN8. It was still a little preseason. Everyone was good, but now. What do you think that because obviously on Derby Day we wake up, you feel it's the Derby because everyone's now found the Kaizer Chiefs Orlando Pirates flags, they put it on their cars, they're wearing the t-shirts. Do you think we'll still have that vibe even though it's Soweto Derby at home?
Unfortunately, I'm going to say no to that question. I would have loved for us to have that spirit, that vibe and that spirit, but unfortunately, as you know, where we are in the country at the moment, it is through the COVID-19 pandemic, unfortunately, we won't see that vibe and that spirit. If I would have hoped that even though the fans wouldn't be at the stadium, that we'd still have that vibe and that spirit in the streets, in the cars, in Kokasi, where we grow up. In your case, Soweto, in my case, But unfortunately, I don't feel as well. Maybe in Soweto you will still have that, but I just feel it won't be the same. But brighter days are coming, as the vaccines come into the country. Hopefully next year at this time, hopefully we'll be back in the stadiums.
Hopefully the new season Soweto Derby will have some amount of fans in there, because that's probably the biggest money maker for both clubs as well. Let's move on to our final discussion topic of the week before we go into the weekend's fixtures. TTM this weekend came into the news again. They obviously bought Bidvest Wits at the end of last season, and 6 months in now, they have sold the majority of TTM to a Limpopo businessman under a company. I don't know if you have that press release, Tim, and you sent it to me earlier on in the days. Just looking for that, but either way, TTM is under new majority shareholder management. It's a Protoscape 202cc. It's a CC that has been checked. The PSL has approved it, and they've transferred the club to this consortium. They'll continue as Chakuma Mazivandila. What do you think of this team, man? Obviously, I know you're not a fan of this. I'm not happy about this. It looks like it falls back onto the PSL who approved these transactions. It feels as though they're looking for, when they approved the transaction initially for the sale of Wits, it was, do you have the money in the bank? It wasn't, do you have a sustainable business model or set of financials of the past 3 years that kind of show that you can run the club. And now obviously TTM's finding themselves in a lot of trouble, because even though they're getting a grant from the PSL, it isn't enough. They had to sell the club. Rumors are that they sold the club because they bought Wits for 50 million. They sold this one for a valuation around 40 million. So they've made a loss, and so it doesn't look good. But what do you think about the situation?
Well, it's unfortunate because the team that TTM bought was one of the ever present, if I can call it that, or the teams that were there when the initial PSL started in 1996, 1997, in the form of, at the time, Wits University. But it's unfortunate that Wits University was dismantled and we thought that it would be a long-standing team that's gonna last for the foreseeable future. But that foreseeable future was unfortunately 3, 4, 5 months. It's very sad to see these kinds of things happening in our football, and it's sad on another front, because we find that the team itself, they come into the PSL, and the performance is I mean it goes two ways, It goes two ways, It can go both ways, whereby a team comes into the PSL, it could, and that's what it could go both ways. Where a team comes into the PSL and creates hope for a team or a province that previously was starved of PSL football, but with TTM it hasn't been the case. It's always been one story after another, and it's unfortunate that it ends this way. I see that just reading a couple of reports, it's seen as 15 million rand in debts. So obviously, as part of that purchase price, will be used to repay some of the debts that they have. Players haven't been paid their salaries, and that could be the reason for some of the subdued performances that we've seen from TTM over the past few weeks. So it's I asked you this question earlier this week, and I wonder, the businessman who's purchasing the club, even at that valuation of 40 million, is it worth 40 million right now? Is the club worth 40? Is the club worth 40 million right now?
You're finding a club at the bottom of the log. It should be. Look, the value of the PSL status is holding it up, but they're at the bottom of the log, and so there's a probability game that you're playing with the valuation to figure out what your probability of survival will be.
Exactly.
And I think that probability is very low. But I do agree that there is a minimum price, and I think the minimum price is around 30 million. But they added the 10, I'm assuming possibly because But they obviously the TTM owners wanted to sell and get their 15 million back. They were never going to get it back because this team wasn't. If this team was mid-table, you could have warranted a 50 million, but it hasn't been run well. And I don't blame Wits. I don't blame Bidvest for selling because it's a business. They're a business. Football is not profitable in South Africa. I'll say this countless times. It is not profitable, and you need to create avenues for people to sell clubs. So if people are saying they're not happy with people selling clubs, but owners need to make money. If the investment's not there, the returns aren't making it, you need to create an avenue. So I'm happy that there is a loophole where people can sell clubs. And you can see that there's a market with people who can buy clubs. My problem is with the PSL. The PSL needed to a question needs to be asked the PSL as to how their vetting mechanisms when they approve the sale, how stringent those are, because now we're finding a club 6 months later in debt, not being able to sustain itself. Meanwhile, 6 months ago, you said you approved the transaction. Even with this transaction, and if you read the press release that the PSL sent, it says that the conditions imposed by the executive committee included that contracts of employment of all players are transferred to the purchaser. Disputes that may exist will be dealt with by the corporation, and any awards and rulings must be handed down, must be satisfied by the corporation. My one is that first one, contracts must be honored. Contracts must be transferred. When TTM got the board Wits, the contract negotiations, because it was at the end of the season, it was that one was a lot easier to navigate, because obviously some players are coming off of contract, others you're renegotiating. But the problem I had was that they didn't uphold a lot of the contracts. Many of the contracts they cancelled, even though they were mid-contract. They renegotiated whatever settlements they were, and that was it. The whole situation with Buhle Mkwanazi, which is a contractual situation, was a red flag, and there were a lot of red flags with this club. The other question that many people have been asking is, they were in the playoffs. They were in the Glad Africa PSL playoffs. They finished third in the Glad Africa Championship. They were there. Why didn't they want to fight for a spot going in for free? They wasted 50 million. Okay, they made a 10 million loss. You could say they wasted 10 million to try and push their way into the PSL. Is that a risk worth taking? I don't think so. But I think for me, that's where the issue lies. And even now, with this new businessman coming in, can I trust that the PSL have done a great financial due diligence on this new owner to make sure that we don't have a situation where come next month or 3 months down the line, TTM players are not being paid? Players have come to TTM, they've gone. We don't know why. They'll tell us, no, the coach, Upa Manyis has gone into the wilderness. Buhle Mkwanazi never even donned the shirt, even though his contract is sitting with them. Just Nshonga arrived and he left. They got some money for him, but essentially he wasn't even playing to a certain extent. I think last week you told me Toto Ngele is no longer playing. What is going on with the contracts of the players? What's happened? That's where my thing is, and I hope that the new owner has been vetted properly. This whole mess sits at the door of the PSL. No one else. That's it for me.
And you ask yourself that question as to 100%. You make a valid point. The guys were in the promotion players. Why didn't they buy? Why did they push for a promotion spot in the promotion playoffs? What happens now with the owner of TTM? Because he is the brand. I presume the brand lies with him. What happens now? I mean, where to now?
No,
I'm just asking as a question that I'm putting up in the air. It doesn't have to be answered right now. But that's what I'm asking. What happens with the TTM brand right now with this club? Because obviously the brand is, I suspect that the brand is tainted. Can they change their name mid-season? Probably not.
No, they won't. They're not allowed to. So they're going to keep it up until the end of the season. Next season, whatever Chakuma Chamazivandila has been, will be a new club. They're going to move from the Vembe district to Polokwane. So you're going to have Baroka FC and them. in that position. And yeah, so look, it's not a happy situation. I just hope the player contracts are honored. That for me is the number one thing. If you cannot honor player contracts, you should not be buying football clubs.
But can I ask you another question? What about the players and their mentality, their state of mind, their frame of mind going into the end of the season? They are rock bottom in the PSL. They've got a club which is in the MGC, rock bottom as well. What is going on? What's going on with the frame of mind of the
get
players?
paid. Play to get paid. That's it. If they get relegated, they get relegated. Paid to get paid. You as a player, honor the contract, honor the fact that they're your employer, give your best, but most importantly, don't worry about the results, because at the end of the day, if this club gets relegated, I can find another club. It's not the best environment it's not the best workplace, and I don't want to begrudge people to stay in bad workplaces for too long. So quite frankly, if TTM get relegated, they've lost out. Whoever bought it would lost out on 40 million. And the players, yes, but some of the players there are quality. Ngele's quality, Miguel Tim is quality. Mkonazi's contract will be freed up because of the relegation clause, and he'll be able to sign somewhere else. And that team will be strict. It will be stripped of players. Rachel is there looking to resurrect his, and to a certain extent for some of the guys, it's an audition for other clubs. Rachel, I heard Tukalaranti was training with them, trialing with them, trying to see if he can't resurrect his career. It essentially, that's what it is. Some players went there because they thought it was an opportunity to get game time, and it was, and we can't begrudge that, because it is. It's good game time. You're playing against quality opposition in the PSL, and if you have if you have a consistent run of games where you can actually do well, then it works for you. Outside of that, look, quite frankly, if I was a TTM player, if we got relegated, we got relegated. I'll find a contract somewhere else in a better position, even if I have to take a pay cut, because this is ridiculous.
Yeah, it's not a good advertisement for our football. I'm always a fan of. I've got no problems with teams buying clubs and but if I mean, because now the league is now it's tainted the image of the PSL. It's literally this transaction has tainted the image of the PSL.
No, but it's not TTM's fault. This is not TTM's fault. There are checks. You know this, team, and you're a CA. There are checks and balances that need to be followed. There was a breach in the checks and balances. They were not followed by the PSL when they did their due diligence, and this is what happens. I get why fans are not happy, don't want clubs to be sold, because you don't know who else is going to come in and run the club, and they might run it into the ground. Well, look, it took 6 months for them to run it into the ground. I don't blame TTM's management. I think on their part, their blame is they ran this into the ground. But the big issue is, why were they allowed to buy the club in the first place? I understand Wits saw an offer price, and they asked for proof of funds. They received it. And from that point on, if I've asked for proof of funds, I'll give you the club. But obviously, the PSL approval was to make sure that just because you've got money in the bank doesn't mean that you can buy a PSL club. And that's a lesson to everybody. It's, yes, if you have 60 million, that's great, buy a PSL club, but you need more than that to run it. And you also need to be able to find a way to generate income. Yes, it's unfair with COVID. I feel you, I get you, but from a broadcast rights perspective, you couldn't make it work even with the broadcast rights. You couldn't make it work even with the PSL grant that was coming through. That, for me, says that you struggle. We've watched Bloem Celtic go into the dumps, not being able to play players for a few months, looking to find a buyer. They couldn't find a buyer, but they somehow found a way to still keep the club afloat. This is just something else, and I think the PSL needs to take responsibility.
100% important. It's a sad situation. I'm thinking of the players at the moment. I'm thinking of the uncertainty that's going in the players' minds, and for going into the new season, you're unsure about your future as a soccer player. But as you said, this could be an opportunity for them if they just put their heads down and graft. Or it could be a chance for you to who knows? The team could survive. The team could survive. But my big question is the buy. I mean, what valuation were you doing for that tells you that TTM was worth 40 million for a team that's at the rock bottom of the PSL with with almost at about almost halfway through the PSL, and you buy a team. Confidence is low on the players, and
But
so it really, I really asked the question about can you? It's different. It's
T-Man,
it's very difficult to turn things around at the M4 because
no,
where the confidence is low, where the confidence is low, it's very difficult to turn things around. I
no,
look
yes, it is
look
difficult.
at the club as a
But
whole. The
no,
DSTV Premiership, the DSTV Disky Challenge team, rock bottom in the PSL, 0 wins. They've lost all of the games. And look at the team in the PSL. They're really struggling. It's very
no,
difficult to come in and turn things around. It's the mentality of the players it's very difficult to come in and turn things around. Yeah.
and to a certain extent, I agree with you. I agree with you. And the on field is bad, but look at it off field. Look at the situation. We've heard rumors that last week we heard rumors that it could be sold to a businessman in the Northwest. We also found out that there was somebody else there. So there was already competition that created not a market related environment, because obviously the price could be pushed up based on the competition of how much these guys want to run a PSL club. And I think TTM may have played on that a little bit to try and up the price. Yes, we've agreed, we spoke about this earlier. It's not the price, but look at the conditions that this transaction was done, and the competition.
I ask you a question, is does the handling of the club change with this change of ownership in terms of the question that I'm asking is
yes, because you've got a majority shareholder.
Listen to
so you've got a majority.
coaches. Listen, coaches, backroom staff, office staff, social media manager, those kind of roles. Does that change with the club going forward? But we've always looked at. Sorry, I know
yes.
it's a light. I'm putting it as a light-hearted touch to the serious
No, I
discussion
get
we're having.
it.
Look at the kit of TTM. Look at the kit of TTM. It's a light-hearted touch. What happens with those kinds of scenarios?
No, yes, and I'm going to answer you. I've got your answer. It is yes. They bought majority of the club. They control the clubs. They can make the decisions. I'm sure they've negotiated with some of the employees that some will stay, but you kind of feel as though mid-season is going to be hard for them to change, but they can change the coach. They can change the backroom staff. They can change some people who are working in the back office. They can bring a new culture. Remember, it's not the old TTM owners that bought Wits. It's a new ownership group, and they own the club. They own over 50%. If you put 40 million in something, you have to be able to change these things. And if they don't, then it's going to be disappointing. But hopefully they will do that and get them to be a professional club. T-Man, I don't want to dwell on this a lot. Let's look at the fixtures and then close out the show. So I'm just gonna put this. I'm gonna share this. Put this up. Wrong one. There we go. So this weekend we start tomorrow night. Amazulu play Stellenbosch on Friday, and obviously you got the Soweto Derby on Saturday. You've also got SuperSport United versus Morocco Swallows, top of the table clash, an important one. Sundowns will be hoping that this ends in a draw. They don't want one of them to step up and push. Golden Arrows playing Maritzburg United. Golden Arrows no longer undefeated, but nice little KZN derby there. Bloem Celtic versus Chakuma Chamazi Vandila, a bottom of the table clash. 16 plays 13. This one's going to be very, very important, especially with the new owners of TTM. Black Leopards and TS Galaxy, another bottom of the table clash on Saturday. Just to round out the fixtures on Sunday, Baroka play Cape Town City, and Mamelodi Sundowns play Chippa United. Some interesting fixtures. T-Man, what are you looking for outside of the Pirates and Chiefs?
My fixture of the weekend is SuperSport United up against Morocco Swallows. And I spoke earlier on in the show about Mzansi Soccer. They are the team that's under the radar. No one's really looking at them. No one's really paying attention to them. They've been collecting points under the radar. The team is high on confidence. Bradley Krobler firing on all cylinders. Man is high on confidence after getting that goal scoring record. He is the top goal scorer in the PSL at the moment. They've also got the youngsters at the forefront there in Kamukhelo Mukwena in the middle of the park. He's looking to cement his place and show Bafana Bafana coach Molefi Ntseki that he has what it takes to control the Bafana Bafana midfield and almost it's an opportunity for him. And also got Sipho Mbule, who we've always spoken of very highly of. So this is a great game for SuperSport United. They're playing against Morocco Swallows. Morocco Swallows also very high on confidence. But they nearly lost against Mamelodi Sundowns. They were able to get back into the game through Musa Nyatamampo. But I'm going to say SuperSport United is going to win that game. Looking at the other fixtures of the weekend, you said it right. We're going to be looking at TTM up against Bloem Celtic. Can the change in ownership that we spoke of recently, can that inspire the team to impress their new owners? Because sometimes, although I spoke on it from the negative front, there could also be a positive front whereby the players are inspired by this change of ownership. You want to show your new employers that you're hungry, that you want to show that they can turn things around. There's still 50 games to fight for. It's very, very tight there at the bottom. 2 wins and you are out of the relegation zone. So if Chakuma can really find a rich vein of form, they can really, really get out of that relegation zone, and it could put them at ease, and it could alleviate the pressure that they felt in the first half of the PSL season. Those are my highlight games of the week of the weekend.
Yeah, so for me, it's the one you've named all of those. I'm fascinated to see how Golden Arrows and Maritzburg United play. I think Golden Arrows is an exciting team to watch. I think I'm a fan of defense, and Golden Arrows have such a great structure. They play in 2 banks of 4, with 2 strikers up front, and that works from a structure perspective, and they don't deviate from it, which is really nice. Friday night could be very exciting. I think Amazulu and Stellenbosch have the ability to turn it up, to turn the lights on, and make it look good.
Can I just come in there on there from Amazulu? I've been reading reports about Simpiwe Shabalala. I'm just wondering what's happening with Shaba and why he hasn't gotten the chance to play for Amazulu. And I've also, I think our listeners will be very, very. I'm sure I'm like a continuing musical note. I'm on Amazulu. There's Paramani Mahlambi. I'm just wondering, will this be his chance to finally get onto the field? Because time is running out for Paramani Mahlambi. There's still time for him to impress the national under-23 selectors as we go to the Tokyo Olympics later on this year.
No, true, T-Man. But I know you love Paramani Mahlambi, but if you look at that Amazulu team, it's stacked. He needs to. Here's the other thing, and I think this is what South African players forget, is that you need to put the hard yards in training. You can't just come and think because you're a talent that coaches are going to pick you. You need to work in training. If you're not going to do the work in training, we won't see you on the weekend. That's a simple thing, and that people need to understand. But I digress. Look, those 2 relegation scraps there, Celtic, Chakuma, Leopards, TS Galaxy, are going to be quite exciting. But quality might not be that great because I think these teams can't score, which is the problem. I think Celtic have a problem because I think, yes, Dumisoma Ben is great, but I honestly do think they need additional firepower, someone who can just give them the goals they need on the right end of the pitch. And obviously the ones on the other weekend, Baroka and Cape Town FC is going to be great. I think that one's gonna give you a lot of goals. Cape Town City have found a way. All of a sudden, Justin Shong is now in. Dansane scoring goals. Lakay scored a great goal over the weekend. They seemingly now look good up front. At the back, it's a problem. But yeah, that's essentially how they're set up. They're good on one end of the pitch, but they're not that great on the other. T-Man, final words from you. As we go into this weekend, what do you want to say? What do you want to tell the peeps?
If you can, when you do go out and go shopping, wear your Kaizer Chiefs shirt, wear your Orlando Pirates shirt. Let's bring back the Derby spirit, even though we'll be at home and let's stay at home, let's stay safe and let's sanitize and let's enjoy the mouth-watering fixtures at our disposal this weekend. I'll definitely be watching Mzansi Soccer, hoping that they'll win and add some pressure to Mamelodi Sundowns, because Mamelodi Sundowns, they thought that they ran away with the PSL title. There's a team that's coming for you, and it's your neighbors in Tshwane there from Mzansi Soccer.
Kaitano Timbo's done a great job for SuperSport United. But thank you very much, T-Man, for joining. This was the Mzansi Soccer Show, everyone. Thank you very much for watching and also following on the podcast. That'll be out on SoundCloud. So just thank you very much, T-Man. And from myself and T-Man, enjoy the weekend of football. And all I can say is, le sale, kakahiso.